And now, Politically Speaking with Gene Cubbison.
Well, time to kick that political football around some more. The Chargers Stadium deal looks like things are pretty much going south and the team heading north.
For us to have a framework that we would put on the ballot, we have to have a term sheet that we would negotiate with the Chargers. And the deadline for that is soon. It's approximately 1 month from today.
Check out this field of dreams that the Chargers would be snubbing, uprooting players, coaches, and scores of employees, leaving their fan base and city at large without a long-time civic asset to rally around. Well, joining us now to size up the shifting landscape of our stadium situation are Professor Bob Stein, who teaches rhetoric at San Diego State University. Love good rhetoric. And Tony Manolatos, spokesman for the Mayor's Stadium Advisory Group. He is no slouch in the rhetoric department either, and I say that in the kindest way. Professor, we're going to start with you. I see that you had an op-ed piece last week in Voice of San Diego. Here's how San Diegans take back the stadium debate, I guess, from the movers and shakers who are framing it. Their narrative, you say, dutifully promoted by the mainstream media. That's a very broad brush here. We weren't dutifully promoting anything, I don't think. But it seems that your premise here is almost like crowdsourcing an advertising campaign to say no public funding. And this may be moot anyway, but go ahead. How are you going to do that?
It would be an advertising campaign that would promote no public funding and try to get people to vote no should the initiative come to a vote in January. And Tony probably knows what the status is of that. I don't. But I teach rhetoric, and part of teaching rhetoric, rhetoric is the art of persuasion, and part of teaching rhetoric is about teaching people how to participate in a democracy. And that's what I teach my students.
You think the no vote has been underrepresented here? It's all been framed as like, let's get on board the bandwagon. And
I think the idea of public funding for the stadium has never even been discussed publicly, at least in this phase. Now, I'm not.
Almost a given?
It's a given. The framing, is a good word that you used, the context of the argument started right away with, how do we fund this thing? How do we come up with the best deal to give Mr. Spanos and the Chargers what they're looking for?
Well, this is the demand of the Shield, the National Football League. They're not a public service here. They are a private entity. And Tony, what about this? At some point, we've got to say maybe this isn't going to happen anyway, but right now the percentage is roughly 1/3 public funding in this, and it's an investment, but is it going to be paid back? This is essentially going to a stadium that the league is going to use for its own benefit.
Well, I think what you have to do is you have to look at what the city is already paying to subsidize Qualcomm stadiums, to subsidize the Chargers.
$13 million a year.
It's about $13 million a year right now. Okay, and they're losing money. Some of these NFL owners have shown if you build a new stadium and you build it correctly, you actually could make some money. AT&T Stadium in Dallas, for example, just recently, more than 50% of their revenues now come from non-Dallas Cowboy games, rodeos, events, things of that nature. The city has said we need to get out of the business of managing that stadium. We're not stadium experts.
And it's probably got to be imploded at some point.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, and you can't have the 8th largest city without something to put big things in.
Something's going to happen with that property, whether it's a stadium for an MLS team or the Aztecs, and then the city is going to assign a third-party vendor who is a stadium man expert to bring in events that'll help generate some income.
Okay.
So.
Well, Professor Bob, like I say, this could be a moot point, especially if the team leaves, but at some point, if they don't, you would think that maybe there's going to be an outreach to other teams that are going to see a team leave and maybe be shoved in here to tell them no, period, no, do you get this, and vote it down. What becomes of that site?
I can't speak to that, Gene, because I'm not.
You want to ideate anything?
What I can say is this, or would like to say is this, and Tony is an insider in this. He's been involved since the beginning in the planning. As I can tell, as an everyday guy and a professor who reads a newspaper, who watches TV, I'd have to ask Tony, was there ever a meeting where people said, is this even a good idea to fund the Chargers, or should we just say no? And in saying no, should we walk down a new path? Should we be more imaginative about what San Diegans can do with their money? Secondly, I don't see this question in the debate. Okay. And
Well, let's ask Tony here, and that was a rhetorical question. Was there ever this idea fully explored that it must be publicly funded?
It was. The mayor put together a very public advisory group that held public forum, and we got a lot of input from folks, and the mayor has continued to get a lot of input. People have weighed in for several months now, and if the city wasn't already subsidizing Qualcomm, I think you could make the, there shouldn't be any public money involved, but we're already contributing public money. There's not going to be a tax increase. Nobody's taxes are going to be raised to pay for this stadium. So the way it's going to break down, if it happens, would be everybody's got to give a little bit to have this community asset.
Gentlemen, I'm hearing the final gun ready to be sounded here, but this isn't going to go away for a while, so we will revisit this topic. Thanks for being here this morning with it, Professor Bob Stein, Tony Manolatos, and